The transmission this day of your time is called the shells of Earth. We are going to briefly describe the different layers or frequencies that are closely connected to your physical reality and in which different kinds of experiences can be had. Of course, you have the physical shell, which you are very familiar with as physical beings, having a physical experience, but with a slight shift in frequency, you can experience what we call the elemental shell. And the elemental shell is where you meet elemental beings, elemental expressions of consciousness, such as pukas, fairies, sylphs, silkies, flaming salamanders, and many other representations that elemental consciousness has the ability to present itself in. Now, these shells don't really move outward per se. That's just the way you might experience them a little bit in physical reality from your space-time perspective. They're all right here, like everything is, but they're just slightly different frequencies that are still very strongly connected to physical reality. So by allowing yourself, in whatever way works for you, through meditation, through other exercises, to imagine and ponder and get in touch with the idea of these different frequencies, based on whatever symbols you already understand them to be, you will connect and be able, if you practice, to communicate in different ways with the different forms and expressions of consciousness that can present themselves to you in these different frequency shells. So, as we said, there's the physical, now there's the elemental. Elemental beings are kind of like a part of the overall energy of the earth, but they don't have to necessarily continue in a particular form. They're much more flexible, much more malleable in how they present themselves. They can present themselves as very solidly physical, but it's more like they're on a level that's akin to the idea of moldable clay, where they can go back into the energy and disappear, become non-physical, or at least quasi-physical, in a way that you cannot perceive them, and then they can crystallize themselves in some physical form, and that's why they can also be shapeshifters, taking many different forms. So by focusing on whatever affinity you have in a relaxed state, an open-minded state, to the elemental shell, and practice this on a regular basis, you can develop more communication, more awareness, more ability to perceive elemental beings, maybe even slightly before they make themselves more solid, because you can extend your senses by following the formula, and that makes you more capable of seeing things that are invisible to you now, but can become visible to you as you extend the sensitivity of your senses. So by interacting with the elementals, you can gain a deeper appreciation and understanding of your place in nature by relating to their place in nature within the elemental shell, and you can become more flexible in your experience of space and time by forming that relationship with the elementals. After that, there is the frequency of the etheric shell, and this is what includes the idea that you typically refer to as the lower astral realm. While that may seem to be the idea of a realm or a frequency or a shell that is completely in spirit, it actually has a lower frequency component that connects directly to physical reality. It's a borderline, a borderland in which spirit beings can also make themselves appear to be relatively solid, or at least to some degree visible. This is where the idea of ghosts reside. So the etheric shell is what allows, in its frequency, a spirit being to lower its frequency to be closer to the idea of the physical shell, the physical frequency, while not completely actually being so. But the lower astral realm, the etheric shell, can allow them to present a representation of themselves as physical, because it's a low enough frequency, close enough to physical reality for you to be able to perceive them. Especially, again, if you raise your vibration even just a little bit, you can not only perceive the elementals when they make themselves come closer to physical reality vibrations, but also the idea of spirits who may take on the qualities of the etheric shell in the lower astral frequency to make themselves visible and appear very solid and even be touchable to you while still remaining in spirit. It's just that they're using the vibration of the etheric shell to imprint themselves a little bit more into your physical reality experience. Then, beyond the elemental and etheric shells, you have the archetypal shell. This is where consciousness resides and presents itself in kind of a small series of group collectives that represent symbolically different attributes of beings. So it's a more of a symbolic representation, but you can still experience many of the representations of consciousness as if they are, in many ways, physical beings, but these are more representative of qualities. So you can create the idea of what you call god or goddess presentations, even angelic presentations. The idea, again, being that they're imprinting themselves in the archetypal shell to represent a certain quality or experience of energy. In other words, examples like motherhood, fatherhood, childhood, or the idea of elemental ideas, not in the same elemental shell, but the idea of the old concepts of elemental ideas. The sun, the moon, water, fire, earth, air. These kinds of things are presented in the archetypal shell, which is a symbolic representation, but can take on physical representations that would be familiar to you. They can look like human beings, they can look like demigods, they can look like the elements themselves, like a fire being, a water being, an air being, an earth being. They can take on many natural qualities to symbolically represent an entirely large concept that builds up the concept of physical reality in components. So you have the idea of, as I said, the earth vibration, the fire vibration, the spirit vibration. These things take on this quality of being archetypal symbols that represent whole entire concepts or directions or qualities of things that are close to your experience of physical reality. Then beyond the archetypal shell, there is the collective shell. And this means simply the collective consciousness of your entire planet, everything on it, not even just humans, but everything on it. The trees, the rocks, the sea, the animals. And it gives you an opportunity to experience your way of connecting to the cosmos while still retaining a connection in a grounded state to physical reality. The collective consciousness has been represented through different beings, through ascended masters and various teachers throughout your history, being that they would tap into that collective and sort of channel it to you. Beings like Jesus, Krishna, Buddha, Vavoka, so on and so forth, Mary. All of these kinds of beings in various forms have been able to tap into the collective of your planet, the higher mind of all of you, so to speak, to bring through information, to share information. But of course, this doesn't mean that each and every one of you can't tap into this on your own. To access the collective information that you may require here and there, now and then, to apply in your lives in a way that allows you to be more balanced, more positive, more powerful, more energetic in your expression of physical reality. So you have these different shells, and there are others, but the ones that go beyond the collective are not as closely connected to your physical reality. They then include the idea of going into spirit, higher dimensions, so on and so forth. And it doesn't mean, again, you can't tap into them, but these shells, the physical, the elemental, the etheric, the archetypal, and the collective, are the ones that are the vibrational levels most closely associated to your experience of physical reality, and on which you rely, whether you know it or not, on which you tap into, whether you know it or not, more often than not, to guide you in life and to experience the connections that you may feel to nature and the collectivity of your entire species and your reality as you experience your journey on Earth. So allow yourself to practice this by opening up in your imagination, whether through a meditation or whatever technique you wish. Even gardening can do it because you're close to the earth and close to nature and start to feel yourself as connected to nature. And even the idea of the cryptic meditations that Willa has delivered to all of you will aid and assist you in getting in touch with the elemental level and maybe even the etheric, because again, physicalized spirits of the lower astral are also part and parcel of the cryptic and nocturnal journeys. Then you can go into parallel realities at another time. But first, gain some insight and gain some familiarity with the etheric shell and the archetypal shell and the collective shell, along with the elemental and the physical. And you will feel more things happening synchronistically that contain and include experiences within those shells, so that you broaden and enrich your experience of physical reality beyond the physical shell, but only into those shells that include the ability to connect to physical reality in a way that serves you best in life, on your path, on your journey of being more of who you truly are. We thank you for allowing us to share this idea with you today. And in return for the gift you have given us of interacting with each and every one of you, we ask now, with your questions and dialogue, how may we be of service to you?
Hi, Bashar. I have some questions about Christina von Rijn, the Swiss girl who is born with an expanded state of consciousness and is constantly in communication with source energy on all levels. So I was wondering if Christina is one of those few people who truly embodies, who truly is unconditional love. And then I've got another question regarding her body, because she makes this amazing discoveries, like her body is able to blend in with the background, those kind of things. So it makes me wonder about who she truly is. Is her body truly human, or is she a hybrid or something else? Thank you. Bye-bye.
First of all humans are hybridized. And therefore, some people may be willing at this point or able at this point to tap more strongly into those hybrid genes in a way that will allow them to expand their senses and do things that others may not be able to do, that might seem unusual, but are simply representative of the abilities you all have if you would in fact learn to tap into that genetic structure that's connected to the cosmos in the same way. That's all we will say about that at this time.
Good day, Bashar.
Good day, good day.
It's always a pleasure to speak to you, so thank you.
And you as well. It is our passion and our pleasure.
So thank you for those sharings. I'm always, for some reason, still amazed at the synchronicity of what you talk about and what I'm interested in discussing. So,
all right. If it's fun for you to be amazed, you may continue to do so, even though it becomes something more common in your reality experience.
Yeah, it's a good place to be. So with that in mind, I've been placing more of my attention and focus on this idea of the Earth and climate change as one way to look at it.
Yes.
And some of the things you've mentioned about these layers bring up some questions about, I've been drawn to study more of this topic, and I'm reading stories of what some people are doing to the Earth or extracting from the Earth, that maybe their relationship to the Earth is not one of, it's not symbiotic.
Yes.
And one of the thoughts that came to me is that there's this denial that there is something that is negative about that action, and that it's a denial of oneself.
Yes, of course, always.
And so when you talk about these layers, and specifically the thing that came to my mind was the archetypal layer, is it on the one side, the positive side? For me, when I read these stories, I have a negative response that makes me want to do something positive, but at the same time I need to, or not need to, but those stories are not happening in my reality, but they're still causing me to want to do something different.
Yes, there is always the importance of taking an action that is representative. When you see something that you don't prefer, take the action that is representative of what you do, because that's what navigates you closer and closer every day to shifting into the version of Earth that you prefer to experience ultimately.
And I think that's where I'm maybe tying some of what I've heard from you and from Abraham, is that what I'm trying to now focus on is I'm seeking out the positive things. I'm looking for people that are trying to make a change, stories that celebrate how we can reconnect with the earth.
Yes.
And at the same time, I guess I should be mindful not to invalidate these other stories that may come across I might perceive as negative.
Yes, you can observe them neutrally and recognize that they're negative without necessarily invalidating the pathways that people are taking, because they may have to learn things in a very different way. And if you invalidate it, then you take away, in a sense, your ability to see that they're actually capable of learning something in a positive way from it.
Okay. And so the collective shell,
Yes.
which is this, I guess, embodiment of these bigger energies that we have named in different ways. Maybe I'm kind of making strange connections here, but I realize that just being in a place of gratitude, reading
Yes.
something about an amazing forest and how they all connect and communicate with each other without ever having been there or experienced it, I have this sense of gratitude, and I wonder if in a way I'm connecting with some of these shells because
Yes,
of
of
the energy
course.
that they represent.
Yes, of course. But again, that doesn't take away the ability to take actual physical actions as well, which then anchor them into your reality.
Yeah, it's that's something that I am also exploring is what actions can I take?
Well, it's very simple. You can very simply start some action that is representative of the restoration of the natural balance of your planet. I mean, if nothing else, go plant some trees.
Yes. And one last question on this is, I think part of these different layers is the idea of even being aware of them. I think there's a
Yes.
not seeing as such. And I thought what was interesting is that we are putting these things into the environment, whether it's nitrogen into the water or carbon dioxide into the air, and they are invisible to
Yes.
most people. And I thought that was interesting in that we don't see the cause, but we see the effect
Yes.
generally.
Yes.
Um,
Well,
And
just like in the manifestation of your physical reality, you're not always aware of the belief system. Sometimes your beliefs, being unconscious, are invisible to you, but you always see the effect in physical reflections.
so we are seeing the mirror, the reflection of whatever the actions may be, whether they're ours or someone else's.
Whatever the choices are, always has a reflection.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so it's not so much about, because part of me wonders if as we move into higher frequencies, whether we would actually be able to perceive those things.
Yes. You
Yeah.
would be more aware of what is invisible to you. You'll become transparent to yourself with regard to your belief systems, and you may actually have your senses extend to the point where you have some kind of visible energy representation of things and elements that are invisible to you now. Yes.
And connecting with, say, the elementals is one part or the beginning of that journey. It's something.
It can be, because they can guide you into how to rebalance yourselves, because they are the very essence of balance in nature.
And this is, I think, I mean, I know the answer to this question, but I have doubts in it, and I know I said it was my last question, in that I don't believe I've ever seen an elemental per se. I feel a lot more connected with nature and the environment more recently than I have in the past.
Yes.
And I still have gratitude for these things that I may not perceive immediately.
Yes.
But I guess there's a part of me that wishes that I were able to have an experience that I could say I truly believe or saw.
All right.
Something along those lines.
Well, again, it's more likely when you actually balance all the energy within yourself by taking the actions that are actually representative of the energy you say you prefer, thus allowing all levels of you to work and move forward in balance, then again, by following the formula, you raise your frequency and make it more likely to allow things that are invisible to you, including beings on different levels, to become visible to you. You don't have to insist on it, but you do have to take the actions so that you can move forward in a completely holistic, balanced way in order for all those levels to be more perceivable to you. So the paradox is you have to take more physical actions on the energy you prefer in order to see the non-physical things more clearly.
And would choosing not to share this aspect of myself with those around me be a way of getting in the way of that alignment?
It depends. If it's not appropriate to share something with someone you know simply doesn't think that way or believe that way, it's not about trying to convince them, so it's not like you have to share. But the idea is to make sure that you are moving forward towards something rather than avoiding something that is actually something that could help you. But you have to make that determination yourself. What's appropriate and what's not.
Bashar, as always, thank you so much. Much love.
You are so welcome. Our unconditional love to you as well.
Good day, dear Bashar. Arthur here. We are tapping into what we are the vibration of, as everything is here and now. And I understand that each and every one of us is that permission slip in and of itself. Could you please share with us the mechanics of storing energy outside of yourself in order to be able to access it then later at any given point in time? Thank you very much. Ha, Atu, and Aveo.
There is an electromagnetic field around you made of spinning electrons. You can, in many ways, and do in many ways, store energy slightly outside of your physical form there and can draw upon it later when you become more aware of how to make those electrons spin harmoniously, when they spin at the same rate all the time. Then they can act as a kind of a dynamo or a wheel, in a sense, that will store energy that you can tap into at another time.
How are you doing, Bashar?
Perfect, and you?
Perfect.
All right.
A couple questions for you.
Yes.
So my first question is that, in general, I'm living a very passionate life that I very much enjoy. There are a few aspects of my job that I sometimes wish were different, and sometimes I get frustrated when thinking about them.
Can you make them different?
What was that?
Can you make them different?
I think so. That's sort of what I'm struggling between. If I should attempt to change them, kind of push and change them, or if it's something that I need to sort of live into fully in order to transcend.
Well, again, yes. And again, you have to be honest with your self-examination. Are you the one dampening the excitement that could be in those portions of your job because you have certain belief systems that are not allowing you to figure out how to do them in a more exciting way? Or are they truly not representative of your excitement and can't be altered in any way, shape, or form according to the parameters of the job that would actually be representative of your excitement, which might be a clue that this isn't overall the job for you? So you have to make that determination within yourself, but always check with yourself first to make sure you're not the one dampening the excitement when it could be something exciting if you can open your imagination and do it in a more exciting way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, okay. So it would, if it's something that I can't immediately change in my current, for the most part, I love my job. It's a small aspect of which is different. And it's something I foresee I likely am going to need to be doing. What would your advice?
Well, what is your job?
I'm a high school teacher.
Yes.
And part of I work at a boarding school, and part of my job is that I have to coach certain sports. And there's a sport that I'm coaching this winter with an individual who I don't particularly enjoy working with. And there's elements of that specific part of my job I wish were different, and it's looking like I might not be able to change.
All right, and why don't you enjoy working with that individual?
He's he's just much more intense than I am, and he's not. I would define him maybe as slightly angry and irritable and just energetically. I get along with him, but I get a feeling inside me, like I almost wish I was doing it on my own rather than with him. And then
all right, is there not something you can do in your interaction that can help him raise his frequency? Can you not, in a sense, be disarming with him?
Yes, I certainly can, and I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to sift out right now, is like what's the best way for me to step into this.
All right, well, I'm not saying this has to be it, but you could open up your imagination and think of a number of different ways you could interact with this individual. First and foremost, of course, not taking the irritation on yourself, because you're creating that within your own energy. So the idea is you can attempt some experiments to adopt different aspects of your personality when interacting with that personality to become someone a little different than you are and approach him in a very different way that's more disarming. You may use humor to disarm the intensity of that individual. You may use some form of wisdom or sayings to disarm him, but the idea is to maintain your true personality so that you do not lower your vibration to match his, which is what causes the struggle within you. You have to approach this as if it doesn't affect you at all. You can look at this individual in a number of different ways, and we would suggest that you explore doing so. Step outside the bounds of what you think your personality is and see what else you may be able to become to interact with that individual. Become a little bit more like a chameleon and shift in whatever way allows you to feel the way you prefer to feel, while allowing a portion of your personality to interact with him in a different way that may allow him to let go of the irritations and anger that he may be experiencing. And you can also have heart-to-heart with this individual, if you haven't done so, to let him know how it is he may be coming across, which he may not even understand. Have you had a heart-to-heart conversation with this person?
And to be fully clear, like, he's just one aspect of it. The other aspect...
I don't care. Don't avoid the question. Have you had a heart-to-heart with this person?
No, I have not.
Why not? What are you afraid of?
I guess it just didn't...
Do you remember that we have said that communication is one of the forms of abundance?
Yes.
This is exactly why. When you can clearly communicate in a loving way what it is that you perceive is going on, you may actually be capable of using that form of abundance to allow the other individual to have an opportunity to change themselves. Not that they have to, not that they will, but at least give them the option, give them the opportunity by allowing them to know how you are perceiving them, how others may be perceiving them. And therefore, they may not even realize how they're coming across, but you can give them an opportunity to know so. Again, doesn't mean they'll change. And again, it doesn't mean you have to feel affected by it. But if it persists beyond the idea of anything that you can do to help the situation be more creative, change in more positive ways, then you may have to determine that it might be possible that you need to be in a different location with different people to do what it is you're excited to do. This isn't the only job in the world where you can do what it is you're doing.
Right, definitely.
So all of these options are available to you, but you actually have to use your power to act on them. Otherwise, you'll never know what could have changed.
Beautiful. And is this situation that I'm going into, I mean, I know the answer to this, but it's all here for me, right?
Of course. And for others. Again, it's not always a one-to-one reflection when you encounter someone who's nothing like you, but it is in your life for a reason, because you may be able to help them.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, I have one or two more questions, if that's okay.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if you can explain what is happening, like, energetically in my consciousness or one's consciousness when I experience feelings of guilt or unworthiness? What is happening to my consciousness when that's going on?
You are lowering your overall energy frequency, and you are slowing down the transmission of information along the neurological pathways of your body and your brain.
Interesting. Beautiful.
And your final question?
My final question is that I have a tendency to
You choose.
Okay.
I choose. Yes?
Yeah. I often choose to seek approval of others, and I'm wondering what is an effective way to unlearn this.
Why do you care what others think? They're not living your life. You are. You can take advice when and where you feel it's appropriate to absorb it and apply it in your life, but you're the one that gets to decide what's true for you. So why do you care when someone who's not living your life tells you something or needs to approve you? Why don't you simply approve yourself?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And
Thank you. Do you have a good answer? What do you get? Here's the way you ask the question. What am I getting out of needing the approval of others that I'm not doing for myself? What am I getting out of it? Because you don't do anything that you don't believe serves you somehow. And sometimes that simply means that the alternative, because of your belief system, is too scary. So you stay where you are because it's familiar. So
I feel like
what are you getting out of it?
I feel like I'm often worried about making other people uncomfortable if I'm living my true self, that it's like too much for them. And so I'm
So what?
Yeah.
Again, if you're not doing something intentionally to harm them, intentionally to make them feel uncomfortable, if you're really truly being yourself to the best you can, then whatever they choose to feel is their choice. So why are you going to make your life conditional on someone else's issues?
Yeah.
Is this helping?
No, yeah, it is.
All right.
Helping very much.
So ponder those questions for yourself and see if they still make sense to you, because when they stop making sense, you'll let them go.
Beautiful. All right, thank you so much, Bashar.
You are welcome.
All right, have a good day.
I absolutely will. You may too.
Thank you.
Hello, Bashar. My name is Shauna, and I live in Salem, New Hampshire. I am still fairly new to your teachings. I've been listening in for about a year now. And there are a couple of things that you mentioned which I'm hoping that you can give me clarification on. One is the threshold of believability test. I've heard you mention that. And the other is permission slips. I have a fairly good idea of what you're talking about in regards to permission slips, but if you could clarify that definition, that would be fantastic. And the threshold of believability test, again, if you could clarify that definition so that I may start to notice more about myself and put this test into practice. Thank you so much, Bashar. Good day.
The threshold of believability test is if there is something that you recognize as your preference, but your belief system is saying that it may be a long time before you can actually experience it in your life, then the threshold of believability test is for you to start at a time when your belief system makes it easy for you to accept that it will happen. So in other words, for example, can it be possible? Can it be probable for this thing to manifest that I prefer in my life? No insistence though. In 20 years, if there is absolutely no hesitation whatsoever to say, yes, I absolutely know for a fact that it's possible that 20 years is more than enough time for something like that to manifest in my life. Then you go down the scale. Is it possible in 15 years? Yes, no problem. 10 years? Absolutely more than enough time, no hesitation, answering yes to that at all. 5 years? Not sure. As soon as there is hesitation, that's how long it will take with your present belief system. So you have to find out what belief is telling you that it has to take that long. And if you find that you can change that belief by identifying what it's telling you and changing the story behind it, then you take the test over again. 20 years, no problem. 15 years, no problem. 10 years, no problem. 5 years, absolutely no problem. 3 years? Well, if you hesitate again, even for a fraction of a second, now that's how long it will take with your present belief system. So look again at why you believe it would take that long for whatever reasons you're creating, and see if you can change that belief in a way that you actually know for sure that that's a way you can change the belief. You can't fool yourself. You have to really know that that's simple and it's easy to do. And you keep going down and down and down until you can go down and change anything no further. That's how long then it needs to take in order for you to experience the physical processes necessary for you to fully appreciate it when it manifests, because it will probably take a little time. Some things can happen more instantaneously, but in most cases you will need a process so that you learn what you need to learn, so that by the time that thing happens, you'll be able to handle it in the best possible way that serves you. So that is the threshold of believability. Now, a permission slip is simply any technique, any tool, any ritual, any object, any discipline, anything in physical reality that you believe will help you become more of who you are, because you're attracted to use it because you believe it aligns with your belief system and will actually allow you to circumvent that belief system to have a broader sense of what is possible for you. So if you're attracted to ideas like astrology or a crystal ball or tea leaves or anything like that, or a particular religion or what have you, or an object of any kind, it's because you believe it will help you do what you need to do to make the changes that you need to make. Now, of course, you're making the changes. The belief system and the permission slip, in that sense, are working hand in hand to make it seem easier to accept the change within yourself, but they're not actually doing it for you, the permission slip. It's just a way of saying, with this assisting me, I believe I can change. Ultimately, you realize you are the actual permission slip, and you can change in any way, shape, or form that you prefer to at any time without necessarily needing a ritual or an object to make it easier for you to do so.
Hello, hi Bashar.
And to you, good day.
Hi, today I want to talk about children.
Yes.
So I've listened to a lot of your material, and I'm super excited because I am following what you've said, the new education system. So we're hanging out with children and they're following their passion, and it's really fun and exciting.
All right.
Thank you so much for that. So I have a daughter, and I'm just wondering she tells me about a past life when she lived with Jesus, and Jesus was her brother.
Yes.
Can you tell me more about what she's actually remembering?
Well, again, she may be making an energetic connection to that being for a number of reasons. Remember, there's no such thing as a true past life. It's simply that all things exist simultaneously, and a person will connect vibrationally and energetically to whatever and whoever who exists simultaneously in another time frame is representative of the theme that they're exploring in this life. So if that particular individual, part of Jesus's family, is somebody that has a frequency that aids and assists her in the theme she chose to explore in this life, the connection will simply be automatic. And it may come through as if it's a memory, but that's just the space-time linear way of looking at those connections that happen, because you don't necessarily know or believe that everyone actually exists at the same time.
Okay, because, she talked about this when she was young, and she would still bring it up now.
Yes.
So
well, how old is she?
What's that?
How old is she?
She's 8.
All right. That's still well within the ability of children to make those connections.
Okay, yeah, and where she's still talking about it, I feel like that she's still connecting with either the energy of Jesus himself or something to do with that vibration is still relevant right now.
Yes, well, and again, like we spoke of earlier, that's part of the collective shell. Therefore, children being born, and that have been being born for quite some time, remember, aren't forgetting as much of who they are and have the ability more easily than many adults to tap into the different shells as they need them and the different archetypes as they need to. So it's not uncommon now for children to be speaking of things that may seem strange to adults, but are actually quite natural for them to be capable of doing to aid and assist and guide them and adults in your reality into understanding more of the nature of your overall consciousness.
Okay, great. Yeah, she is guiding me a lot. And so part of this new education system, my daughter and I have been doing this really cool thing called world schooling where we're traveling, and we actually bought an RV. And we'll joke around and say like, oh, our RV is like our spaceship.
Yes.
So, and I've been listening to you talk about the hybrids are in these like Tic Tac spaceships.
Yes.
So I was wondering if you could just, and even if the hybrid children want to, speak through you, or just, I'm just trying to make a comparison to what we have, our motorhome, right? We fill it with gas, we can drive it around, we park it at a campground.
Yes.
We have different tanks that everything filters through. Can you compare like our RV to like how the hybrids ship? Like, do they have tanks? Do they have gas?
No, they don't have gas, and you should know that.
Okay.
The idea,
fuel,
again,
I guess I should say.
well, not really. The idea is they tap directly into electromagnetic and gravitic energy and cosmic energy to move the craft. In a sense, they travel on different forms of light. But the idea is you can certainly identify with their craft and identify with the idea of your RV being like their craft and that they transport you where you wish to go. So you can certainly overlap those vibrations if you wish, if it helps you maintain the vibrational state in your consciousness that makes it easier for you to connect to the hybrids. You can always do that. But
Okay.
your RV is nothing like their ships. Their ships are nothing like your RV in terms of its technology.
That I totally figured. Do they have like a separate place when they're actually driving it, and then do they have beds like in a different section where they sleep?
Some ships
rest?
do, some ships don't, because they're only for temporary transportation. Again, just like some of your automobiles, they don't necessarily have to have a bed. It doesn't mean you couldn't fall asleep in them, but it's not exactly what you prefer to sleep in. So some of them do, some of them don't. It just depends on their function.
I see. Okay. So if I'm thinking about the Tic Tac crafts, maybe that would be more like an airplane that's taking them from wherever they are to their.
In some ways, yes, more like that.
Okay, and then they go to like their headquarters under the sea, and then they have.
Yes.
I mean, are they sleeping? Are they eating? Are they going to the
Sometimes.
bathroom?
Well, yes, sometimes. Now, again, their systems are far more refined than the humans on Earth, so they don't necessarily eat as much, they don't eliminate as much, they don't sleep as much. But the idea is that sometimes they do all these things. Nevertheless, it's a similar experience, but in a way, less of what humans do.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bashar.
You are welcome so much. Good day.
Good day.
Hello. Bashar, my question is, are we controlled by a microorganism in our brain? Thanks.
No.
Oh, good day, Bashar. Hello.
What would you like to discuss?
Well, I'm excited to have this opportunity to talk with you today. So I have experienced the power of the formula that, I learned about it in 2013. And right away, I had a desire to have a private session with you. I didn't have any money. I booked a ticket to California. And within like a week, somebody on Instagram, I don't know who, decided to buy like $8,500 worth of my artwork without even seeing it. Boom, done.
That's how it
There's
happens.
My intention. I'm so aware, and it's been such a ride since then, getting to experience the synchronicity. That is like my excitement, my joy, and my passion. Like just
Yes.
being aware of the synchronicity, following the trail.
Yes.
Incredible things happen. Like,
Absolutely.
And I'm all good with that.
Yes, there are so many more doors that can open, through which the things you need can come, than most people on your planet are aware of.
Okay, I am aware of the doors. My question is, I'm not allowing myself to walk through the ones that I know that are there.
Why not? What are you afraid of?
Well, I don't know.
Yes, you
I'm
do.
getting better. I'm getting better at the formula. Just a couple of weeks ago, the very last part of the formula about staying in a positive state.
Yes.
What would seem what was happening was a bunch of so-called negative events, and I just knew it. And I'm like, nope, something better is going to happen. I just know it. I could feel it.
Yes.
And not only did something better, and it was like a cumulative, supposed negative things. I'm like, oh, something really good is going to happen.
Yes.
And something even better than I expected happened. So
Exactly.
I know that vibration.
Yes.
Okay.
So then why would you be afraid to walk through any of the doors?
It's not that I'm afraid to walk through them. It's just I know they're there and I can't seem to find them, and I know obviously.
But you will find them through synchronicity, just like the person that bought your artwork. You didn't necessarily know that door was there, but it will reveal itself in perfect timing when it needs to. You don't have to be aware in that sense and know exactly where the doors are. That's the details. Let the details take care of themselves. You just have to know the doors are there.
Okay, so with that being said then, how can I distinguish the difference of knowing and believing that those doors are there, right?
Well, you've already had the experience that they are, so why don't you know that?
Right, no, here's the question though.
Yes.
How do I know then if something's just not relevant for me to experience in this lifetime?
Then you won't experience it.
But what if I still then have the desire for something, that means then there's the door, or?
Well, it depends on the reason for the desire. It can be a recognition that something is relevant, or it can simply be, again, a fear-based belief telling you that you need this thing when you don't. So you have to be honest within yourself to know the difference between true excitement and anxiety. What's the insistence about? Because desire, in the negative sense, is insistence. So are you insisting that this thing must happen?
That's the thing. It's not so much an insistence.
As it is.
When I'm not in alignment, it comes from other sources. I have to have this in order, whatever.
All right.
But when I'm in alignment, I know, okay, I'm eternal, so it doesn't really matter. This is my experience here.
Yes.
But if I were to experience it here, it would even be better.
You're making an insistent judgment by saying it would be even better. You don't know that. You don't know that. That's the first thing that people have to realize when we talk about the aspect of the formula that says no assumption, no insistence. What we're actually saying is, if you're really honest with yourself, you realize you don't know what the best outcome actually needs to look like. So don't think you do. That's insistence.
Agreed. And that I hear you in those moments in my life.
All right.
But
But what?
There's just something else I know.
Then let it happen. If it's relevant for you, it will happen. Get on with your life. Do what you can act on. Don't forget, all versions of your excitement are interconnected and will lead to other versions, even if they don't appear that to be connected. Even if you have no idea how one thing could lead to another, they're all interconnected if they are truly representative of your passion. So just get on about doing what it is you can do. Well, then you don't need these other questions if you understand that.
Okay.
Because everything that is relevant for you will unfold.
Right. Well, okay. Well, obviously, then when I'm not in alignment, then I have those questions. But
exactly.
When I am, that's why it's I'm right.
That's one of your first clues as to when you are or are not in alignment.
Yeah. All right. Then while you're in front of me, so to speak, can I ask you if you have a permission slip that will help me get out of my way when I'm in those moments that I haven't ventured into yet?
Well, all you have to do is ask yourself what you're getting out of being in those moments that aren't in alignment. Because you always do things, you always choose things that you believe are to your benefit. So ask yourself, as a permission slip, what benefit am I getting from this? but you have to be very honest in your answer.
But
Because
how do I do that better?
it's very easy. Just pay attention.
How?
You have to be honest. You have to be transparent with yourself. It has to be okay for you to realize you're doing something you don't prefer to do, and let that be okay. So the idea again is, when you ask, well, if I'm doing something that's out of alignment, what is the benefit of that? Then just sit with it and use your imagination and say, well, what am I getting out of this? Well, maybe it's safer than the alternative. Maybe I believe that. Maybe the negative belief is convincing me that if I actually went forward, something worse would happen, and it's safer to just stay where I am, even though I don't prefer it. You have to use your imagination to examine all the probabilities of why you're choosing to do what you're doing. That's all you have to do. Just be in that process. You'll find the answer if you're willing to. That's all it takes.
All right.
So, when those moments happen, don't rush past them. Don't get on with something else. Don't ignore them. Stay with that and take the time to do the self-investigation and ask the question, what am I getting out of doing something that I don't prefer to do? What is the negative belief convincing me here of that isn't necessarily true?
Oh,
Stay with it.
You said the perfect words. And
There you go. There you go.
It's just staying in the moment. That's the key for me. Just being with that.
Yes, that's when they come up. That's all there is. There's nothing more important to do than deal with what comes up in the moment.
Right.
Nothing. Nowhere else you need to be that's more important.
Oh my goodness. I love the validation here. Amazing. Okay. I love you, Bashar. Thank
Our
you
unconditional love to you as well. Good day.
Bye.
Good day, Bashar. I'm Brian from Santa Fe, New Mexico. In one of your previous channeling sessions, you mentioned that New Mexico, specifically Santa Fe, and the ancestor vortex is a good place to change the weather or experiment with the weather. I was wondering if you could go into more detail on that in regard to why that is. And also, I wanted to thank you because in the process of asking another question that I had, I actually was gifted with an answer from my higher self. So as you always say, you're acting as a permission slip, and I kind of experienced that firsthand. So thank you again. Much love. Bye-bye.
Congratulations. Now, different vortices have different qualities. And the Santa Fe vortex, by being connected to the ancestors in a specific way, is connected to a broad range of collective emotionality. And it is your emotionality that actually is reflected by certain weather patterns. So the idea is that in that vortex, it helps, as a permission slip, to amplify your connection to the collective emotional mind, so to speak, of your society. And thus you can see reflections of that connection emotionally playing out in weather patterns on your planet, especially at this time of climate change. There are many chaotic things going on your planet, and therefore the climate is reflecting that.
Hi, Bashar.
Good day, good day.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us.
It is our passion and our pleasure to do so.
So I've been passionate about the science of path of least resistance in relationship to the science of synchronicity, flow state, and play and playfulness.
Yes, well, they're all interconnected and part of the package of acting on your passion.
Yes. So a few years ago, in 2017, some of our neuroscientists showed that we are hardwired to follow the path of least resistance.
Yes.
And the same scientists, along with some other people, have written about it, that how we need to kind of manipulate this quote-unquote lazy nature. So I think that there is a misunderstanding about the path of least resistance.
There is a misunderstanding because it has nothing at all to do with laziness.
Yes, because they don't know who we are and how we are supposed to operate, and they don't know about the higher self, right, and formula, and
they don't.
They think that,
They don't. So they are mislabeling the idea or the notion of the path of least resistance. It simply means that as you follow that, your life becomes more effortless. You're more capable of accomplishing things. You can do less and get more. It's not laziness, it's efficiency.
Right. And the more I learn about our hunter-gatherer ancestors, I realize based on your teachings that they really followed, or those who still live, they really followed the formula.
Yes, of
and
course.
live on synchronicity, right?
It's built into nature. The idea simply is just like nature. It actually, if your scientists are really observing things, nature uses the least amount that it needs to use in order to accomplish something. So again, it's not laziness, it's just energy efficiency.
Yes. So that's the main reason I think that those hunter-gatherers, they didn't have all of these chronic diseases that we have in our modern society. It's one of the main reasons, right? Because
yes, they had some, but not as many. And it was for different reasons more often than not.
Okay. And then like and it's not health related, but you can say that you don't answer, of course. In a lot of our chronic diseases, it has shown that we have mitochondrial dysfunction, and I think that it's also related to this resistance, mitochondrial burnout or dysfunction.
Yes, all resistance to the natural self will manifest in some form of dysfunction or pain or misalignment or inability to actually activate certain features within you. It is a dysfunctional vibration to be something you're not.
Yes. So my question now is, thank you for confirming this, because I wanted to be clarified and confirmed, and so I appreciate it.
Yes.
So now I have a question that if we want to, like, for example, measure this resistance, and maybe some scientists already probably do that, and I'm not aware of it, but would it be one of the best way would be, like, for example, showing this mitochondrial dysfunction through oxidative stress and those things, or like through EEG patterns?
Oh, it can be done in a number of ways. It's up to the imagination of the person and what they're attracted to use.
Okay. You don't have any word, I mean, because I'm passionate about this, and I'm not saying, but I thought that...
Well, the easiest and most obvious way is the idea of experiencing what you call negative experiences, negative emotions, negative thoughts, negative behaviors, the things that are disassociative, the things that are disconnecting, the things that spiral downward and separate and isolate in a negative way. Those are the easiest things because they're automatically reflected by the things and events going on synchronistically in your physical reality. So to us, that's simply the most obvious way to know that there's resistance, is what's your life like?
Okay.
All right?
Okay, thank you so much. That was it, and thank you so much again.
You are welcome. Good day.
Good day.
Hello, Bashar. Good day. This is Miguel from Puerto Rico. I have a question about the window of contact. Now, from 2033 up until 2040, is that contact with the IL, or is that contact including the third hybrid race, which is the Essassani, contacting us? Or if there is another window that you can share where the Essassani people will be more closely interacting with people on Earth. And my second question would be, is there even another timeline that you can share where the contact is much closer? It'll be with basically anyone who wishes to interact with you guys. If we are on the beach, if we are in our backyard, or wherever we might be, and we see crafts or being, and we could just have a conversation. When could that be in a possible, probable future? Thank you. Good day.
First of all, the timeline is not 2033 to 2040, it's 2023 to 2033 or 40. So that's a large window of time in which Different kinds of open contact with different extraterrestrial beings can begin to happen slowly at first, probably in more isolated areas at first, until such time as your people get used to the idea and are more vibrationally compatible with the idea of open contact. Somewhere between 2023 and 2033, you will have open contact, not necessarily with the Yael first, but with another extraterrestrial being. But the Yael will be the first hybrid species to have open contact at the time when it is necessary to start bringing the children permanently to live among you on Earth. Sometime in that window, in those 10 years, 2023 to 2033, that process can begin, not end, but begin. Then, from 2033 to 2040, more likely that many other extraterrestrials, possibly including ourselves, will be able to interact with you along with many other beings. Certainly by 2050, you will have met many different extraterrestrials, including many members of our society, most likely. But the probabilities are always fluctuating a little bit, therefore we cannot be absolutely precise, because we will have to see where you are at any point in that window to determine what is appropriate for that particular moment.
Hi.
Good day.
Thank you so much for talking with me today.
It is our passion and our pleasure to do so. Thank you as well.
I'd like to talk about a situation I have where I am highly sensitive to sound, hypersensitive to even small sounds. I'd like to know first what the origin is. I think my mom had the same situation, the same challenge.
All right. Again, this to some degree is connected to a health issue, so we can only give you so much information. But what we can say is, as we perceive your overall vibration, the patterns of stress that you have in the past created in your life that lasted a long time have affected the nervous system in that area in a way that has stripped its buffering mechanism away to the degree that you are now hypersensitive to all vibrations that are sonic.
So does that mean that as the stress I'm currently experiencing subsides, then this might be alleviated?
If you can alleviate all the stress in your life by changing your outlook, your perspective, and your belief systems on every situation where you choose to experience stress, it's possible by the inclusion of certain substances within your body that are natural that you can rebuffer your nervous system so that the sensitivity will diminish.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's very helpful.
All right.
I recently had an experience where there was banging on my wall between my bedroom and my office, and it didn't come from my neighbor or any source that I could detect.
No, it came from you.
It was from me?
Yes, another aspect of your overall consciousness attempting to get your attention at that particular moment so that you would focus on different things.
Because my internet went out right after that.
Again, that's not unlikely when you are dealing with a surge of consciousness energy. It can affect electronic devices. And again, shutting down to get you to pay attention to other things.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Can you clarify the difference between hope and expectations?
Well, again, there may be many interpretations of this, even among your own people. Hope is a state of being that can be used in a positive way to remain in a positive state and fulfill the fourth requirement of the formula. In other words, remaining in a positive state so that you can gain the benefit of things. So hope as a state of being can be equivalent to that idea. At the same time, on the negative side, hope can also be the idea of a doubt that something will happen in the way that you prefer it to happen. I hope it happens, but I'm not sure. So it just depends on how it's being used. And the idea of expectation can be more of a hope that also carries insistence with it. I hope this happens in exactly this way because it must.
Okay. If Earth if planet Earth is a holographic universe, can you share who or what species is co-creating that with us?
Anyone that's aware of the idea of Earth, of course. Otherwise, they wouldn't be aware of it.
So it's a number of different ET species working in this holographic universe with us?
Well, yes, when we tell you that you have connections to Sirius or connections to the Greys or connections to any other extraterrestrial, those connections are representative of the fact that they're aware of you, and that means they're co-creating the idea of that relationship in their reality too. Otherwise, there would be no awareness, there would be no connection.
And is there purpose for having this holographic universe to communicate with us, to bring us to being the sixth hybrid race?
Is there a purpose to the holographic structure or a purpose to the connections?
Both.
Well, of course, the holographic structure is just the structure of existence. That's just the way it plays itself out in physical reality. So it doesn't need a purpose, that's just the way it's structured. But you can use it holographically to know that everything is accessible from any point, and therefore allow yourself to see distance as an illusion.
You mentioned recently that there's a mothership not far from our planet right now.
It's not a mothership, it's a space station.
Space station. Is that involved in this this experiment or this?
I suppose you're missing the point here. Anyone that is aware of the idea of Earth is involved in the co-creation of the reality that you're experiencing by being aware of extraterrestrials that are aware of you. Is that not clear?
No, I got it. I understand.
All right.
Thank you so much. I'm grateful.
Thank you. Good day.
Good day.
Hi Bashar, my name's Renee from Adelaide, South Australia. My question is, I'm just curious whether the Essassani actually have fewer personality types than humans, because it seems to me almost like the personality types we have, the differences are almost a compensation for negative and fear-based belief systems. So I'm just curious if there's fewer personality types, and by the same token, if there's greater individual differences amongst the Essassani, because you're all being yourselves much more than we are. Thank you.
It is true that many of the personalities that you experience on Earth are compensating for the idea of fear-based beliefs. But the idea of the personalities of the Essassani are still wide-ranging. Yes, there is a type of similarity that may exist in all of us, but you will still recognize great differences in our personalities. It's just that they're all on the positive side. So, yes, to the idea of both of those issues.
Hello, Bashar.
Good day to you.
Good day. So, when you were talking about the shells, I didn't feel any personal connection, although I'm sure I have them.
Well, yes, you would have to in order to be physical on Earth,
right,
whether you feel it or not.
Until you were talking about the archetypal shell.
Yes.
I remember I told you about my dream guide named Berwin, and that he showed up in my dreams as a beam of light.
Yes.
It was like a beam of light that wore clothing, and you told me at some point that he was an archetypal path,
yes,
into shaman.
Yes.
And so when you were talking about the archetypal shell, I assume that's where I'm connecting to that
yes,
energy.
Yes.
And that's the form that it takes for me, as opposed to when you were talking about elemental.
Yes. The shaman is an archetype.
Right. Okay. And I guess Earth specific.
Well, it doesn't mean there aren't such things on other planets, but yes, the shaman for Earth would be Earth specific. Otherwise, what would be the point?
Well, I mean, because of my energy being sort of cosmic.
That's all right. You're approaching it from the Earth gate. Therefore, it has to contain Earth specificity as well to make sense to you.
And would I be correct in saying that I focus more on my connection to the top two shells because of my cosmic connection?
Yes and no. You actually do have some strong connections to the elemental shell, but the idea is that it may not be time for that to unfold in your life yet.
Okay, that makes lots of sense. I had a dream recently that was really interesting where an ocelot came out of the woods and I knew it was looking for me, and I typically have dreams where big cats or cats are looking for me. I'm scared of them.
Why?
I get to a point in the dream where I'm like, fine, if you're going to kill me, I face it, or, check me out, but don't kill me. And when yes.
They're there to kill a part of you.
What part?
Well, any of the assumptions that they're dangerous for you in the shamanistic world. They are symbols of great power. Take that to heart.
I do. And so I'm curious because when I take that turn in the dream, in one dream, the jaguar folded into its own mouth and became like a cosmic looking infinity sign.
Yes. Even cats can be the Ouroboros.
Yes. And then in the most recent dream, I told the ocelot, smell me, but don't kill me. I'm chilled out. It smelled me, and then all of a sudden, it jumped back 40 feet and ran away.
Yes.
Why?
Because you weren't ready for the next level yet.
Huh.
Which was okay.
Yeah, okay. Okay, last question, ish. is...
No, let's make it absolute.
Okay, fair. Absolutely last question. So, in this multidimensional way station that Earth is now, where we're seeing into all sort of other portals and realities, and whether we prefer them or not,
yes,
I'm recognizing that there are a lot of people who, because of the oppressive history of humanity, are going into their fear-based beliefs of trusting less and less of collective sort of organization.
Yes, and splitting off into the parallel realities where they may allow that to accelerate.
Right. And so I was curious from my reality, other than being myself and expressing to them that they don't need to go into fear, if there are other creative ways that you can see in my being that it would benefit.
There are stories that you can write that might be of assistance.
Yeah, books, yeah.
Yeah. When will you do that?
You asked me that a year ago, and I said a year, and you know what? I haven't done anything.
Thank you. Yeah. All right.
Next time we talk, I'll have done something.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Bashar. It's always a pleasure.
Good day.
Good day.
Hello, Bashar. Question about the hybrid children. Do they like to play with weather patterns? My husband and I were hiking in the woods the other day. It was a really nice, clear day. And I could sense that there were some hybrids that had joined us for that walk. And at one point, there was this huge wind. It was like a big whoosh, really, really loud, that just swept through the forest. My husband and I couldn't figure out what that was. And then it started to rain really hard. And somehow the rain was only hitting our backsides. And we started running because at this point we still have 2 miles to go and we were afraid we were going to get caught in a storm. And as we're running, the rain and the wind stop. And then we slow down and then it starts again and we start running again. And the entire time I have the distinct feeling that we're being laughed at and playfully messed with. And it was something like I got a telepathic impression that one of them had said to the other, "Oh, watch how fast they run if we turn up the wind a little bit." And I was wondering, is this something the hybrids do for fun? Play with weather? Thanks.
Yes, sometimes they are a little bit mischievous and they like to play games like that. But we will say that in the case you are mentioning, while they may have been involved, they weren't the only beings involved in that. Many beings can be quite playful and use elements of your reality to play those games and tricks on you to see what you will do. And they do get enjoyment out of it, but they will never do it to the point where they harm you.
I have lots of questions from today's viewers.
All right, please proceed.
Okay. The first question is, when we're connected to the energy shell and drop through into layers of the presence of the earth, is it possible for us to open portals to other realms? I had an experience with a portal where it opened and I was able to see into another elemental realm and a Pleiadian dimension. Can you help me understand that?
Well, yes, of course. The Earth itself, the physical realm, will contain portals to other dimensions. So just because we're talking about the shells that belong to Earth specifically, doesn't mean that you cannot cross-connect to the shells of other civilizations or other dimensions as well. There are always areas on your planet that allow for more accessibility according to the collective belief system of how these vortices are arranged in the physical reality. So yes, it's possible to connect to other dimensions, other civilizations through portals and vortices from the physical shell.
Great. Psychedelic experience may open us up to perceive some of these beings that are in other dimensions. Any idea of which beings or which energy earth shell we're tapping into when we see other beings?
Well, it depends on the beings that you're seeing. Okay. You can just specifically be tapping into the elemental shell and seeing elemental beings. But if you tap into some of the other dimensions or civilizations that most of you are connected to, like Sirius, like Pleiades, and others, the idea then, of course, is that since you've made those energetic connections already to aid and assist and guide you in this life by downloading information and energy from them, then of course, they're also going to be accessible to you through some of the portals and vortices that exist in physical reality.
When shamans take a shamanic journey, do they travel to one of the shells of Earth? And are shamans simply interacting with their own energy projected within a different frequency or dimension?
You're always interacting with your own energy, no matter what level you're on. Remember, you have to create out of your own consciousness, out of your own energy, anything that you perceive or experience in what appears to be your reality. So you are matching frequencies of other dimensions, other realms, other people, other civilizations in order to experience them, in order to recreate your version of them in your reality. But again, shamans being practiced at changing their frequencies in order to be able to access different dimensions, can access many different kinds of things. It just depends upon what their intention at the moment is, what their purpose is for accessing a particular dimension or civilization or group of beings. So it will vary from time to time, but yes, the whole idea of shamanism is the practice of altering your frequency to match the frequencies of other realities, other consciousnesses, so that you can experience them and gain information and knowledge from them.
What's the relationship between the shells and the Akashic records?
The Akashic records are simply everywhere, in every level. The idea is, again, remember, the Akashic records are not a particular place. The Akashic records is simply an old-fashioned way of describing that information exists here and now from everywhere. So you can tap into the idea of information anywhere you are by simply matching the frequency of the information that you seek. So the Akashic records is not a particular place. It's accessible from everywhere because it is everywhere, because everything is here and now.
And are the 9 levels of consciousness you've spoken of before correlated in any way with the shells of Earth? And if so, can you explain more about that?
They're not correlated in the same way that we're now speaking of the shells of Earth. The idea of the 9 levels of consciousness are simply those that are relevant, that you're tapping into in more and more rarefied realms of yourself to be able to guide yourself in physical reality. So they're mostly connected, mostly concerned with the experience of the physical shell, even though some of them are on the level of spirit, on the level of soul. But it's not exactly a one-to-one correlation. It's more like an parallel system that aids and assists you in guiding you in physical reality.
And does the future gray parallel Earth reality share the same shell structure as ours, or did their environmental crisis alter their shells? What ET species ultimately taught the grays how to cross dimensions, and did their intervention with the grays alter the Earth shell for the better?
There are some misunderstandings in the way the questions are being asked here. Remember that the grays are mutated humans from a parallel version of Earth. They were already evolutionarily, technologically more advanced than your version of Earth. So they taught themselves how to tunnel into parallel realities because they were already much farther ahead in their understanding of the whole idea of parallel realities and the vibrations that would allow them to succeed in crossing from one to another more consciously. The idea, again, of calling it the future is, again, a little bit of a misleading concept. They're simply in a parallel reality that may be representative to some degree of what you would consider your future timeline to be, but they are their own timeline, and they are simply at a more advanced stage, or were, compared to the idea of the Earth at that time. So the idea of their own shells were similar to yours because they were a similar version of Earth. And the idea of going into the evolutionary path that they went into, altering, mutating themselves, realizing they had to access other parallel realities in order to access viable human DNA, certainly gave them different choices and allowed them to access different portions of the different shells that we have spoken of. They, again, by becoming a hive mind, required guidance from other beings, such as the mantis beings, to oversee the idea of the hybridization project, since they no longer had, at that point, individual initiative. So the mantis beings and the other overseer beings had to give them guidance in that way because they simply functioned as a hive mentality, which made them efficient enough to get the job done.
Okay, so this next question shifts over to some nature elements here. This person's hometown was hit by a Category 4 hurricane recently and was devastated. You mentioned about the Earth shifting to the different versions of parallel worlds last time. How will these natural disasters shift with the new version of Earth?
Well, again, it's not that the disasters themselves shift, it's that the new version of Earth contains different weather patterns, different climate conditions. So while it may appear from your linear space-time perspective that these kinds of climate experiences will begin to mitigate themselves, will begin to balance and correct themselves, it's not that they actually change. It's that you're simply shifting to another Earth that has different climate patterns that are something a little bit more balanced, something a little bit more along the lines of what you would prefer to experience.
So when you have a challenging experience like that, where your whole hometown is wiped out, what is the way of staying in a positive state when, most people would feel quite devastated by the loss?
Well, again, it's about learning the lessons of the experience. So for a simplistic example, don't rebuild the same way. Build according to the changes. Allow yourself to realize the reasons why these climate shifts are happening. Because of the destruction of the environment, the acceleration of the cycle by the addition into the environment of things that are not necessarily in balance with the environment. So learning these lessons will allow you to begin to shift to other versions of Earth, taking different kinds of actions, showing in your actions that you understand the lessons, and doing things differently is what will actually allow you to shift to two versions of Earth where you can experience things differently, where you can experience things in more balance. So the idea of constantly rebuilding the same way instead of building to what is necessary for the climate shift, well, you have a saying on your planet that insanity is doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different result. So don't do things the same way. Change what you do, make different choices. Allow yourself to flow with nature instead of constantly going against the grain. And you will begin to shift yourself to a version of Earth where the climate situation will be far more balanced over time.
Yes, one person was asking, what actions can we as individuals take on a day-to-day basis to help heal the Earth? Are things like recycling and turning off electronics doing anything to help? And this ties in with previous things that you've mentioned, which is if we believe Earth needs saving, then it needs saving. So do we ignore suffering or take action and raise our vibration so that we can shift to a healthier Earth?
Taking action is not the ignorance of suffering. It is the positive response to the idea that you observe what appears to be suffering and that you take the positive actions to alleviate it. You don't do the same things over and over again. You do different things that are more positive, more constructive. You take the actions that are representative of a more positive reality, a more positive version of Earth. It's not about ignoring anything. It's about learning the lessons from what you are observing or experiencing. So the idea, again, is not to think that the Earth needs saving, because again, there isn't just one Earth. You will never change the world you're on. You will shift to a different world, a different version of Earth. There still may be many people who will not learn these lessons. So there always has to be, if they're going to choose negative things, a more negative version of Earth that they can live on or that they can die on. So the idea, again, is not that the Earth needs saving, because there isn't just the Earth, one Earth. It's about allowing yourselves to learn to work together, collectively, form a new consensus, and act on that new consensus in a way that is already representative of the version of Earth that you would prefer to shift to. Thus, giving yourself the navigational ability to shift to that Earth through the physical actions that you take that are more representative of how someone more positive would respond to the ideas that they observe, like suffering and destruction. So again, don't keep doing things the same way. Do new things.
And so will there be some kind of a breakdown or collapse of governments and societies, et cetera, for positive change to happen on a deep level? Or can it be something more smooth, an experience that's just like getting an upgrade and an improvement piece by piece as we realize and implement solutions?
Again, it's not this or that, it's this and that. There can be either. It depends upon the individual. It depends upon their belief systems. It depends upon their frequency. Yes, you can experience the collapse of certain systems in a certain way to allow for new systems to come in. And yes, you can also experience these things very smoothly. So again, it depends upon your frequency, your belief system, and the actions that you take that are more representative of one way or the other. And just because certain things may collapse, again, doesn't mean that can't be experienced in a positive way. So there are all sorts of variations of the ways to experience shifting into more positive versions of Earth. It's not just this or that.
So, like, as far as resource distribution, how can technological advancement and equal resource distribution continue if humanity shifts to like these smaller and smaller locally focused hubs? How would that impact things like supply chains? Like right now, if you buy a computer, it's been made in so many places, it's not locally focused. And I think there's been expressed in some of the questions a concern that as we advance or we shift to a different Earth, whether we'll still have the conveniences and comforts that we enjoy due to technology.
Why wouldn't you? What kind of an Earth are you shifting to? One where that becomes difficult, or one where that becomes automatic and synchronistic, and that you get what you need and people make what you need in whatever area of the planet they need to, that serves the best of all concerned. Why would you assume that going into a more positive reality would deprive you of things you actually need? That makes no sense.
So what about these ideas of localized hubs that are making things? The reality is we will always have, if we're going to have these technological advancements, more of a world supply chain as opposed to...
Not necessarily. Some things may need to be done locally. Some things may need to be done globally. But the point is synchronicity will organize all of that to the best of all concerned if you simply go with the flow. Let it work itself into whatever areas it needs to work into that serves everyone the best. You don't, again, have to keep thinking about these things as an either-or proposition. You need to expand your range of variables, of possibilities and probabilities, of ways of doing things. One thing does not necessarily exclude another thing. They can work together very well if you allow them to. There's always another alternative. There's always another way. There's always another path that suits you. And if you're going to shift yourself to a world where the consensus reality truly is functioning on a more positive level, there are still going to be all sorts of variations of things happening in the way that they get done. Even on our planet, even though we operate on pure synchronism, there may be things being done by an individual, let alone a local hub, and there may be things that are being created globally. There may be things that are being created throughout the solar system. There may be things that are being created throughout the galaxy that serve a particular planet. Don't restrict the ways in which things get done if they're representative of a positive path. Who cares whether something is localized or whether it is global, as long as it serves the best of all concerned? Why would that be necessary to differentiate?
Yes, and it comes down also to the idea of scarcity of resources and the idea that we have strong beliefs about the scarcity of resources, and
Yes.
we are a master class in limitation.
Yes, but if you again allow yourselves to do things in a more positive way, you will realize there are other ways to do things that will allow you to know that your resources, the ones you truly need, aren't scarce. It's more a matter of distribution. It's more a matter of allowing yourselves to eliminate what you truly don't need and allow yourselves to rely on what you truly do need. And then you will find that the resources will match your needs perfectly. Because again, remember, the principle of the formula of acting on your passion is that synchronicity allows all the things that are necessary to be had to the level that they need to be had. It's not about having more than you need. It's about having exactly what you need, exactly when you need it, in perfect timing. So when you allow synchronicity to start truly being the organizing principle, even on a global level, there will be exactly the resources required for the things that need to be done. They will match perfectly.
So yeah, that's a really interesting perspective because, for example, this question is talking about we have some of the highest degrees of limitation on our planet.
Yes.
And how does a planet get set up so that it's aligning its residents towards the idea of limitation? Like, how does
It's simply a matter of densification of frequency. The idea is that the more dense, the slower, the lower the frequencies are, then the more limitations you're capable of experiencing. But again, you chose a challenging class so that you could help evolve the frequencies of Earth into something more refined as you refine yourself. Remember, it's not just about the population on the planet, it's about the planet too. So the whole idea of starting in a dimensional realm of physical reality that starts out with slow frequency vibrations to allow for more density, more limitation to be experienced as the population also refines its own vibrations and uplifts them and raises them, so too the planet is given the opportunity to experience a refinement of the densification of its own frequencies, allowing it to become a class that can be used, a place that can be experienced for other beings in what you call the future without starting out quite so dense. You're uplifting the vibration of the planet, again, by shifting to different versions. I know this sounds confusing because we keep talking singularly and then we talk multiply, but that's just the nature of your language. Follow along. The idea is to allow yourselves, as you upgrade your own frequencies, to know that you are shifting to versions of Earth that are also upgraded in its frequency, so that the versions of Earth you ultimately wind up experiencing in a timeline will not be as dense. And so anyone else needing to come in at a certain level to experience certain challenges, certain transformational experiences, will not be starting out as densely as many of you did. So you're doing a service by providing an easier classroom for other beings in the future to be able to use the Earth cycles that you have used, but in a less dense, higher frequency way.
Right, and I can see where one of the most important changes for us as individuals is to let go of the concept of scarcity.
Yes.
As one of our fundamental ways of interacting, either through competition or not that competition is negative, it's just the idea that the desperation that can come from feeling that resources are so limited.
Yes, and remember that it is your actions that also have made certain things more scarce because you don't act on them or use them in a balanced way. Right. It's possible you may have actually deprived yourself of certain resources, but again, that doesn't mean they cannot be replaced or substituted for other things that will serve you just as well. Again, when you go back into balance, certain things may remanifest, I'll just use that term, in a way that you will suddenly be able to discover, oh, look, here's another bunch of this stuff that we thought was all gone because you've shifted to a version of Earth where it never was used up.
Right, and even in your conversations with us about abundance and understanding our relationship to abundance, that makes all the difference in terms of your vibrational level and that scarcity idea.
Of course, of course. So, what's the next question?
Are competitive games of dominance over an opponent still played in higher densities than ours?
No. It may appear to be competition, but it's mostly competition against the self.
And how exactly did the atomic bombs dropped over Nagasaki and Hiroshima affect the Earth's shells? Was there a large loss of life and intense heat that caused an interdimensional disruption that you've mentioned in previous talks? And were creatures that we are not even aware of destroyed in the blast, like elementals?
Not so much destroyed, but perhaps their abilities diminished, their abilities temporarily stultified. The idea of not having the ability to be as flexible as they used to be, not having the ability to go into certain areas that they used to be able to go into, to use the consciousness of the world in the same way. It's sort of more like the idea that certain areas became rigidized or diseased and not as flexible as they used to be, not as usable by the elemental shells, or the idea of the etheric shells in the same way that they used to be. It has, over time, subsided, but the idea, again, is this is one of the reasons why global thermonuclear war will simply not be allowed.
That is very comforting that you all are present to assist with that.
We assist, but again, we cannot do things for you. You still have to change your own choices.
Well, like you mentioned that open contact will happen in like local reality bubbles and just for those people who are ready at first.
This is the highest probability.
Can you elaborate on the kinds of encounters that will be typical in this early contact phase?
Again, individual encounters of a certain nature will become the norm at a certain pace, at a certain rate, but we cannot at this time go further into any descriptions of those contacts.
You've also spoken about how our planet is going to experience unconditional love like never before amongst all beings. And when will the collective begin to experience something like that?
Again, remember, it's not the same planet.
Right.
We're still shifting to another version of Earth. But the most likely scenario, the most likely probability for those who are on that path, who choose to match the vibration of unconditional love as much as they possibly can in the here and now, will usually find that large reflections will begin to appear in a more obvious way sometime between your years of 2040 to 2050, and thereafter it will become more accelerated.
Okay, that's good.
As we read the energy now.
Right. So having to do with contact. One moment. Is there a symbol for the, like a telepathic phone number symbol that represents the Shah Yael that you can share with us?
It is not given at this time.
Okay. Can you tell us why we're attracted to simulated experiences like video games and movies and how they might evolve as we do? Is there a higher purpose for them? And why are they becoming more and more immersive and real as time goes by?
In order for you to understand that your physical reality is also unreal, is also a projection of consciousness. And the more immersive the idea of your so-called video games become, or any form thereof of immersive entertainment, the less difference there will be between the idea of something you have consciously created and something you are unconsciously creating, which is the physical reality itself. You are blurring the lines between the two in order to learn that physical reality is also a game, is also a holographic projection of your consciousness. This is one way you break down the barriers of allowing physical reality to seem so solid. So it becomes more flexible, more malleable, more manipulatable as a video game. So ultimately, the same kind of approach, not identical, but the same kinds of approaches you take in terms of being able to make choices in a video game and how things can more easily and magically change according to the choices you make in the game, will ultimately become the way that physical reality is experienced by you as well.
It also kind of reminds me of sports and how they've taken the place of a lot of aggression that maybe used to be acted out in coliseums and things like that.
Yes, it is an apt analogy to some degree.
Talking about the Tic Tacs that you mentioned before.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about the ships? What color are they? What are the actual dimensions? What do they look like inside? Are there different rooms and chambers? How many hybrid children and adults are on each ship? And where are they currently? Are there very many of them around Earth right now?
They tend to be whitish or pearlescent, though there are some differences and some other choices that have been made for various reasons. They range in size depending upon their function. On average, they might be about 40 feet long in your terms of counting. There are, in most of them, a few different chambers that serve different functions. Hybrid beings that may exist within them, not all of them are the hybrid children, a few times there are, but the hybrid beings that exist within them are mostly Yael, sometimes Shael. The idea is they may harbor others from time to time that are visiting. Their compounds, as you say, their bases are mostly underwater, which is why they're that shape, because they function like submarines as well as spaceships. The population in any given one may simply be, on average, about 10 to a dozen, maybe less, maybe more, depends. They're not large. They will have underground and underwater bases at several places. You already have been alerted to the fact that one of them is off the western coast of your North America in the southern regions near the area you know as San Diego. There are other places around your planet as well that we will talk about at some time in the future.
I've heard of sightings of an underwater ship in Kealakekua Bay.
Yes.
Is that one of the locations?
Yes. Since you asked.
Hey, that's pretty cool. What do you think of human UFO investigators? Do you and other ETs deliberately give them false leads to throw them off track? And do you return to the areas to erase evidence?
Some beings may return to erase evidence. Some beings may throw investigators off track in a variety of ways. We, however, do not.
Yes, of course, that's not your nature.
It's also not our job.
There are civilizations that are near Essassani, yes?
In our parallel reality, there are other star systems that are relatively close by that do have other civilizations, yes.
But in terms of like your solar system, are there any other civilizations close by?
Not naturally, no. There are bases that have been created by us on various planets in our solar system, but no other naturally evolved life, no.
Okay. And as far as things like black holes and stars, what do the different types and masses of stars represent on a spiritual level?
Connections to that many more dimensions, connections to much higher and more powerful frequencies of consciousness.
And what do black holes represent?
Gateways and connections as, shall we say, birthing voids to other universes.
What about the idea of like black holes and white holes? And
that's what I just described. Birthing holes to other universes.
So are they one and the same? Like a black hole, the other aspect of the black hole is a white hole?
In many cases, not all cases, but in many cases, yes. They are the functioning corridors or tunnels that allow different universes to flow into other universes, thus interconnecting them all in a variety of ways.
Can you tell us more about the eye and hair color and skin color of Yael, Shayael, and hybrid children in general?
They are similar in many ways to us. They will have a variety of skin colors and eye pigmentations. Again, the Yael look a little more human than we do in terms of your understanding of humanity, so that they can blend among you a little bit more easily. There may be some traits within them that will stand out, like maybe having slightly larger eyes, things like that. But again, there are a variety of tones of eyes and skins and hair, because again, we have all of us in the hybridization agenda gone to the lengths necessary to allow them to look a little bit more like the varieties that exist of humanity on Earth, so they will blend in more easily, and there will be more compatibility genetically for the evolution of the hybrid race known as the sixth.
Okay. Can you tell us something about the Yellowstone supervolcano and other potentially world-altering volcanoes like that?
No.
Okay. When we look into the sun, you know, our eyes can't handle that. What's the deeper meaning of this mass of high energy that is at the center of our solar system? And is it connected to the idea of how we can't meet you in person yet because of the energy level?
It is an analogy for the idea that higher frequencies are not necessarily something that you can handle at this time. Yes, it's an analogy.
Okay. And like when we see faces in nature through natural objects and plants and things like that, is this a form of communication that we're receiving, like from the elemental shell of Earth, or
It can be. It can be. Sometimes it's simply your ability to recognize patterns, which is one of your survival traits. But the idea is that it can sometimes be driven by elemental communication or etheric communication, or your own consciousness reflecting something back to you that you may need to see at that particular moment and consider, that may take you into another avenue or another perspective that is important for you to explore. But again, it can be all these things, and it depends on what's going on. It depends on your ability to discern the difference in all those things. You can't necessarily just assume it's one thing or another automatically. You have to investigate and explore and go deeper into each occurrence of that to find out what is actually happening, because it can happen for many different reasons, as we have just described.
So like for many people, you know, if they look at a mountain, they can start to see a face that then gives the person a feeling of the consciousness of the mountain itself.
Yes. But again, you may be doing that yourself, because as you expand your consciousness, you will perceive physical reality in a variety of different ways, some of which will be very archetypal, because you're now tapping into the archetypal levels of shells. And therefore, you will reflect back to yourself things in what may seem to be an anthropomorphic way to give you more insight into the consciousness of the planet itself.
Yes, for example, in Arches National Park, it's a dark sky place. So it has incredible Milky Way viewing and everything. And there's a location that's called the Three Gossips. Yes. And if you stand there and you look at the Three Gossips, it starts, as the lighting changes, it starts to really look like there's three people standing there.
Yes.
And it comes with stories and all kinds of things when you're tapping in like that.
Yes, so some of that is what we have already described, but that particular location also connects to the idea of what are called the Kachina spirits.
So elaborate on that idea.
The Kachina beings, as known by many Native American tribes, are beings, interdimensional beings that exist in what we would say are in between the dimensions, in the spaces in between, which is its own dimension. And that particular location not only can be utilized archetypally and etherically and elementally in the way that we've already described with the shells that we've talked about, but because of its particular nature and particular frequency, it can also strongly be used as a vortex to connect to the Kachina spirit beings and further communication between the humans and the Kachinas.
So if you're standing there and you start experiencing these beings through these rock formations, it's basically a permission slip to access. Okay.
To open up your consciousness in a particular way, on a particular frequency domain that allows for stronger and clearer communication with the Kachina spirits.
And also when you look at certain mountains or rock formations, they may look like animals.
Yes.
And they change as you look at them.
Well, again, for a variety of reasons, you may be doing this, or something may be attempting to communicate with you. It can be many different things. So it just depends on the level in which you're interested in connecting to.
Right, like harmonizing with a certain energy accesses that energy within that rock formation.
Well, yes, in a sense.
To some degree, okay.
It also can simply be a projection of your own consciousness.
Right, yes. You've mentioned that humans have used magic wands to tap into their auric fields. Are there any instruction manuals that exist that can guide a modern person into tapping into their auric field? And are wands useful for tapping into earth energy shells, as you've mentioned?
Like anything, it's a permission slip, but the most modern way for you to begin to understand how the idea of wands originated and why they can work as permission slips is to investigate the idea of waveguides in your modern science.
What? Okay.
Waveguides are usually devices of a certain dimension, and I don't mean dimension in the sense of other dimensions. I mean literally physical dimensionality, mathematical proportions, ratios, that will be tuned to certain wavelengths and frequencies of energy and guide those wavelengths by being of the same dimension or diameter as the wavelength through the waveguide, like a tube, like a wavelength, like an energy wave sliding through a tube of a certain diameter, because that is tuned to that wavelength. So the idea is that this has rendered down into the concept of wands, which is representative of an ancient technology that was understood long ago, and information about that was lost. So you're reinvestigating that again. But the investigation of waveguides can give you the basic understanding that underlies the concept of the so-called magic wand.
Okay. What is your differentiation between surrender and submission? And do they just mean the same thing, or is it?
Well, it depends on the meaning you give them, but we generally talk about the idea of surrender as a letting go of insistence and letting the control that's automatically built into you take over synchronistically and automatically. Submission might, to some people on your planet, be a similar concept, but it can, for most people, come with the concept of subservience, or in a more positive sense, shall we say, giving over to someone else's approach. But it can be done negatively too, by giving your power away to someone else, so to speak, or creating that experience. Of course, you don't ever actually give your power away. You're just pretending that you have. And that can be a negative version of the idea of submission. But the idea of acquiescing to a, shall we say, more reasoned and usable idea, you can allow yourself to submit to it, knowing that it actually may serve a better purpose than anything you may have yourself come up with in the moment. So these things are subtle variations in meaning depending upon how your words are used. And of course, the meanings of your words change over time anyway. So put your intent into using whatever word you use in a more positive light. And for you, that may then be the meaning of the word for you.
Have you or any of your family ever used a Ouija board? Why is it associated with negative energy? And what is the experience like for the entity that's being channeled through the board? Let's start with that.
No, we do not use such things because, again, we have direct connections to the idea of spirit and can communicate freely with them. Again, a Ouija board is nothing more than a permission slip that allows many people on your planet to believe they are capable of creating that connection and having communication with spirit beings. The idea of the negative connotation simply comes from past definitions that are negative and fearful, and therefore it has simply been given this connotation over time that it is a dangerous thing to do, which of course allows an individual to lower their vibration to match more negative frequencies and maybe have more negative experiences with the idea of the energy from their own minds, from their own consciousness reflecting back to them in a negative way, in a dark way. But the idea is simply an idea of a device to, as a permission slip, allow you more efficacy in communicating with spirits because you believe you need such a device to act as a go-between between the physical and non-physical worlds.
So how does is there really a spirit coming through that's communicating, or is it just people channeling?
It can be. It's not coming through the board, literally. It's just connecting to you because you've asked it to. In a sense, you could do the same without the board.
So when someone's using the board and their hands, it starts moving around and everything, is that actually generated by the person themselves in the connected
Remember
state?
What we said about either or?
Yes, it's both, huh?
It can be both. The idea is that your energy may be playing a part, the spirit's energy may be playing a part. The idea is it will depend upon the ratio of either as to what the purpose is being served.
And so here's a ghost question. Are there areas on Earth where ghosts are more easily able to manifest? And how different is their connection to Earth's etheric shells compared to a physical person?
Well, their connection is that it provides in the etheric shell a connection point to the physical world. And therefore, it may be more representative in physical reality that by tapping into the etheric shell, you're going into the so-called real estate that ghosts and spirits already occupy to make it easier for communication to happen. There are certain places on the planet now and then, but these things fluctuate according to different energy patterns of the earth, where it might dissolve the barrier, so to speak, just to put it in old terms, between the physical and non-physical worlds to make it easier for communication to happen. But really, the truth is just about anywhere is possible. It's not so much the idea of the where as it is the when, because as many of you have experienced yourselves, there are certain timings where the fluctuation in the energy patterns of Earth make it easier, generally speaking, for communication between the physical and the non-physical. And this usually plays out anywhere on the planet when that section of the planet is experiencing the time between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. So it's more the idea that certain energies fluctuate, certain patterns fluctuate, and there are less densities being experienced at that time around the planet for a variety of reasons we will not go into detail on right now, but it's more a matter of when than where.
Okay. And so I guess our last question is, are trees sentient beings?
Yes, just not sentient in the way you are. They don't express it the same way. But everything has a sentiency because everything is made out of consciousness. Different beings, for example, a rock, may use the idea of consciousness in a different way in order to be considered sentient. But the reason you don't consider them sentient is because they use it in such an alien way. In a sense, a rock will use your consciousness when you observe the rock to know that the rock is there, to make themselves conscious of you. So a rock and minerals are using sentiency and consciousness in a more piggyback way, reflecting off of your use of consciousness to make you aware of them so that they can be more aware of you in the way that makes sense for a communication to occur between you.
Okay, so like, for example, with trees, if you were in a grove of trees where there are trees of various ages,
yes,
it's possible to experience it like they are tree people and they are various ages. And
yes.
Is that the same idea that you're saying right now with the rock?
Well, no, not exactly, because trees use sentiency and consciousness in a slightly different way that's a little bit closer to the way you use sentiency and consciousness.
So
not exactly, but a little bit closer.
So that would be why we would be able to perceive them as individuated consciousness that are like people in a sense.
Yes, and at the same time, if you expand your own consciousness to make more connections within yourself and your own species, you can also experience the forest as a single identity. Remember, let go of this concept in many cases of this or that. It's this and that, especially for nature.
Yes, in fact, over and over again in nature, it shows you that having that balance between the collective and the individual needs is very important in being a harmonious planet.
Exactly. In the same way that if you allow yourselves to think of yourself as a collective without invalidating the individual, and think of yourself as an individual without invalidating the collective, you would function more holistically in balance. And all of the things and many of the things we have discussed today about things like scarcity and resources and what have you would take advantage of the automatic synchronicity that would come with that point of view, and things would fall into place exactly as they need to.
Well, thank you so much, Bashar. We really appreciate it. Very enlightening.
It is, once again, our passion and our pleasure, as always, to interact with each and every individual and all of you together collectively, because again, you are family. We are family. We are all one, and we are all individuals together on an exploration of consciousness and experience that shall never end. And that is exciting. So now, if you will, prepare yourselves for your imagination meditation exercise. Then at this time, we will proceed with the idea of your meditation. Allow yourselves to become very relaxed. Let go of the cares of the day. Let it all flow away, and let your light flow into you and expand throughout you. And allow yourself to open your minds and imaginations to the idea of the different shells of Earth. Again, these are simply different vibrational states that represent different levels of consciousness that are connected to your planet, to your people, to nature, in a variety of ways. So let yourself simply be familiar with the idea, first and foremost, of course, of the physical shell. In a calm, relaxed, natural way. The beauty of it, the nurturing of it, of nature itself, the warmth of it, the coolness of it, all the things that to you represent the most positive qualities of physical reality. When you allow yourself to feel that vibration expanding within you, then let your imagination take it a little bit farther up the vibrational scale in frequency and pierce into the idea of the elemental shell, where there is a free-flowing consciousness that can allow itself to crystallize here and there in different shapes, different presentations and representations, to interact with each and every one of you in ways that will stimulate your consciousness, allow you to see things differently than you ever have before, may send you down new paths of experience and understanding. Allow yourself to know that those elementals are always there. You may not always see them, but you may feel them, until such time as you allow yourself to equalize your vibration with the elemental shell so that they can become quasi-visible, which will act for them as more of an invitation to become more solid and more visible to you. So allow yourself to think of them as being just right on the edge of physical reality as you know it. Doesn't take much of a vibrational shift to experience them. Then allow yourself to open up to the etheric shell, in which you can have communications and conversations with spirits, with beings that may once, in your terms, linearly have been alive on your planet and are no longer, your spirit guides, friends and family that have passed on, who may be able now and then, when appropriate, to take on a physical form representation to interact with you more solidly in that lower astral realm that vibrationally is very strongly connected to physical reality. Allow yourself to allow your mind to go into, your imagination to go into that etheric realm where the spirits can make themselves known to you, and you can have the communications that will let you know that nothing has been lost, that the relationships still exist, that you can learn and play together on and on eternally, no matter what state of being anyone may be in. And then allow your imaginations to broaden and allow your vibrations to rise into the archetypal shell that allow you to commune with the gods and goddesses, with the symbolic forms of shamans, with lightning and thunder, and even with the beginnings of the Kachina beings, the spirit beings that exist between dimensions, for they can partake of the archetypal shell to present themselves in ways that make sense to the symbols of your physical mind, so that you can learn to have a different style of communication in symbolic form, and open up your telepathy and telempathy with them to really let in the idea of the symbols that represent your path in life, so that you can learn a language that is more simplified, more telepathic, so you can move forward and expand your vibration in a very different way, and learn more about the path that you are above and beyond the physical reality, and how different groupings on your planets with different agendas and different goals can sometimes be a way that archetypal consciousness has of presenting itself by bringing together people of like mind for different purposes that are their passion, and in those groupings to represent an archetypal ideal, an archetypal path, an archetypal energy that can guide you by being familiar with your particular ideas, your particular passions, and you gather together and attract to you magnetically all the beings of like mind, and thus contain within that grouping a powerful archetypal presentation of a higher energy that will allow you to move forward in an effortless, efficient way. And then continue to expand your consciousness to incorporate all of the ascended masters and teachers that have brought through the collective consciousness to let you all know you are equally powerful, that your vibration can raise to a high point of fourth density reality where you have strong connections to all that is in a variety of ways that are relevant and germane for your physical path, to be teachers yourselves and learners yourselves on your path, as your path, to share with others that which you know will serve them, which will allow them to illuminate their own inner spark and broaden it and shine it forth. Whether they take it or not is not the issue, for it's none of your business whether they do. But to be of service to the collective whole, in love and light, in peace and harmony, in beauty and grace for all concerned, so that all may tap into that collective and be who they truly are, be the piece of the big puzzle picture that they were made to be the shape that is true for them, so that all may fit together in harmony with every other piece and form the big picture that supports all the pieces, even as the pieces support the big picture. Allow yourselves to let your vibrations rise according to what is needed at any given moment, dynamically shifting back and forth from shell to shell, or incorporating all the shells depending upon what it is you are doing and who it is you are being, and what aspects of yourself you are bringing to the forefront of your experience as a physical persona. Let it harmonize and blend with all the other aspects of your personality in whatever ways, again, serve you and everyone best. Let it all fall into place automatically through the beauty and the archetype of synchronicity, which permeates all of the vibrational energy of your reality. And it is one of the main structures of your reality itself. For everything is an orchestration. Everything is synchronicity. It just depends on how you're looking at it. That reveals what you need to see out of the holographic whole that synchronicity is. For synchronicity is physical reality's way of letting you know that everything is connected, and that distance and separation are illusions. Use them to your benefit, but do not let them rule the structure of your consciousness in a way that prevents you from tapping into whatever you need at any given moment. For physical reality is a projection of your consciousness. In a sense, is an illusion that you can use to your benefit if you understand the power of the illusion instead of falling under the illusion of power. Let yourself drift and dream in this understanding and feel your vibrations shifting and rising and focusing on whatever shell is germane for you, is important for you, is relevant for you at any given moment, and interact with the forms of consciousness therein. They are there to serve you. You are there to serve them. Let yourself drift and dream and become more lucid in the concept of the physical dream, so that you become more lucid in all the different shells that allow you to dream the dream awake and aware as you move through life. The life that is you, the unique you, the aspect of you that is the reflection of all that is in this unique way. Breathe it in and make it your own. our unconditional love to you all, our deep appreciation and gratitude to you all. Allow yourself and the shells within you to blend and harmonize as they need to, so that you may be more of who you truly are and shine forth as a living example to others, that they can also choose that path as well in their own unique way. Be here, be now, be at peace, and welcome home. We bid you good day.